What would you do if your own sister stood up at a family dinner, smiled at your parents, and announced she was moving into your house, without asking you? That was the moment I realized my family never saw my home as mine at all. They saw it as just another gift for my sister. But what they didn't know was that I had an envelope in my bag that would change everything. Before I dive into my story, I want to know, where are you watching from today? And as you listen, let me know in the comments how this story makes you feel or if you've ever experienced something similar. Your thoughts mean a lot to me and I'd love to hear your perspective. I should have known from the table. My mother never brings out the sterling unless she's making a point. The forks look like they were polished with gilt and lemon oil, set alongside linen napkins folded into tight little swans. She set 3 tapers in antique brass candlesticks even though it's late June and the air outside feels like a damp cloth wrung over the Mississippi. The ceiling fan ticks, blowing the smell of rue and bay leaves through the shotgun house, old wood sighing as if it recognizes the ritual. "Ruth, baby, you look tired," Mama says, and it sounds like a compliment dressed up as concern. "Did you sleep at all after your shift?" "A couple hours," I say, which is true if you're generous with the definition of couple. The night charge nurse called out sick, a woman coded in 512, and I drank my breakfast out of a vending machine. I washed the smell of bleach and fear off my hands twice before I came over, but I swear it still lives under my nails. Daddy rises halfway from his chair and kisses the air near my cheek. He's wearing the blue shirt he saves for weddings and funerals. It doesn't fit the occasion unless I'm missing something. Nora's already at the table, elbows on the runner. Mama says is for show. Her nails are lacquered a glossy black that absorbs the candlelight. She's in a linen jumpsuit that wrinkles beautifully, the kind of wrinkle that only happens to fabric that costs more than my weekly grocery bill. She's scrolling with her thumb and smiling like the screen just told her a secret about the rest of us. "Hey Rue." He still calls me by the nickname I stopped liking when I was 12. "Can you pass the cornbread?" "I haven't sat down yet." "Sure. Let's do Grace first," Mama says, lamplight making her pearl earrings catch and throw tiny moons onto her collarbone. "And then we'll toast." "Toast. That's new for a Tuesday." We bow our heads and Daddy thanks the Lord for gumbo without okra because he'll never accept that slime is a texture and not a moral failing. He thanks the Lord for keeping Nora safe as she explores her path, and thanks the Lord for my hands which tend the sick and the scared. It's nearly sweet until he adds, and for keeping Ruth's temper gentle when she's worn thin, as if God and I have an arrangement I keep breaking. "Amen," Nora says brightly, then drums her fingers. "So before the gumbo gets cold I have news." Mama's smile looks rehearsed. Daddy reaches under the table and, I catch it, squeezes her hand. There it is, the small choreography of a moment they've practiced. I sit. The chair creaks like it did when I was 16 and announced I was going to nursing school instead of film. The year I learned that love in this house sometimes sounded like practical and sensible and be serious. The chair is a witness. Remembers our roles. Nora thrones herself at the head where Daddy usually sits. Mama has, accidentally, placed her there with the big scallop charger and the crystal flute, and I realize nothing tonight is accidental. "So," Nora says and clears her throat like she's on stage at Tipitina's, "next week I'll be moving into Ruth's place." She smiles the smile you prepped for a camera, the one that says this is exciting and we're all in this together. She turns it from Mama to Daddy and finally to me, the last stop on a tour that should end in applause. My fingers curl around the edge of the tablecloth. It's white cotton and I think because this is where my brain goes when I'm tired, that my knuckles could bleach a field. "Just until I figure things out," she adds breezily. "This sublet in the Marigny fell through, the landlord's a psycho, and you know how it is with finding your creative groove, sometimes the universe reroutes you and Ruth has that lovely extra room," Mama says, pouring champagne she does not drink on weeknights. The pop startles the air, bubbles run up like moths to the light. "It'll be good for both of you. Sisters should be close." "Close," Daddy echoes. "Family helps family." It's so smooth, this script, I wonder how many times they've read it to each other already. "Did anyone ask me?" I say. Comes out even, which surprises me. Nora laughs like I told a joke. "Rue, come on. You're never home. Those night shifts? I'll water your fiddle leaf fig and bring in your packages." "Built-in house sitter." "You killed a succulent by looking at it," I say. "And the fig is artificial. See." She points with her flute. Proof you don't need the help. Mama's smile does a small, firm adjustment like she's winding it tighter. I mentioned it last week on the phone, baby. You said, we can talk later. So we're talking. Later. We're not talking. They are. I chase a piece of andouille around my bowl. The roux is perfect, deep as coffee, and I don't taste a bite of it. From the front room, Bourbon Street bleeds in as a humid suggestion. The far-off shout of a tour group, a saxophone practicing scales, the roll of a streetcar. My little Creole cottage in Bywater is 3 miles and 1,000 lives away. I can see the chipped blue paint on my porch steps, the brass mail slot I polished with toothpaste the day I moved in. I can see the stack of moving boxes in my garage labeled in Sharpie that isn't my handwriting. Nora, I say, why are your winter clothes in my garage? She blinks. Huh. They're in tubs. Nora's winter, I quote, and books. Saw them when I took the trash out Sunday. Oh. She claps once. That's just temporary storage. The Marigny place was supposed to be a go. It's not. But we've pivoted. Mama tops off her glass. We were going to surprise you next Tuesday. Daddy rented a truck. You work, what, 7 to 7? We thought we'd make it easier, Daddy finishes, and the word easier lands like something heavy dropped onto soft ground, disappearing without a sound. I put my spoon down. The silver makes a small, decisive chime on the bowl's rim. It's not easier when it's my house, I say. Baby, Mama says, voice honeyed, you've always had a generous heart. Don't let work make you hard. I'm not hard. I breathe through my nose. I'm tired. Nora reaches across and squeezes my forearm like she's the one offering comfort. This is good for us. I need a fresh start. The residency with the Artist Collective is stalled. Donors, and the universe dropped this right where I needed it. Your place is so, quiet. I can think there. You can think in your apartment, I say. The one you have. She waves her hand. Lease ends in a week. Landlord wants the unit back for family. It's a whole thing. Daddy leans forward, elbows denting the runner. Ruth Ann, he says, and I know I'm in trouble because he's used my middle name. Your sister is in a rough patch. We won't have you abandoning her. The word abandoning flares behind my eyes. I think of the woman in 512 and the way her husband rubbed circles into her knuckles while we shocked her back. I think of the teen in 306 who came in after a shooting and said, please don't tell my mama, before anyone knew if he'd live. My work is a museum of things that matter. The word abandoning in this dining room sounds like theater. I'm not abandoning anyone, I say. I'm setting a boundary. Nora's laugh loses a degree of warmth. God, Ruth, a boundary? Did your HR lady teach you that word? We're family. Family helps family, Mama says again, and the repetition works on the room like an incantation. It occurs to me then that I almost left the manila envelope in my car. I almost told myself tonight wasn't the right time. But in this house there is no right time that isn't their time. I slide my hand down the side of my tote and feel the stiff edge of the folder. My pulse steadies. It's a curious thing the way a decision can change your blood. Before we plan any moving trucks, I say, I have news too. The fan keeps ticking. Somewhere in the kitchen the old fridge clicks on and hums. Mama's smile falters. Daddy lowers his glass. Nora's thumb hovers over her phone. What kind of news? Mama asks, and her tone carries that soft warning I know by heart. Don't make a scene. Don't be difficult. Outside, a thunderhead gathers itself over the river, the air darkening by degrees. I know this storm, I was born here. It blooms from heat and insistence. I'll show you, I say. I place the envelope in the middle of the table. It looks out of place among the crystal and silver, a plain thing with a plain purpose. Nora's eyes flick to Mama's. Some small flicker of uncertainty passes between them, thin as a whisper. Ruth, Daddy says carefully, what's this about? My mind sifts through images, the last 6 months playing in a quiet reel. The roofer's invoice that made my stomach drop. The plumber standing in my yard shaking his head at an ancient pipe that finally gave up. The repairman's hands quick and apologetic as he explained why the heating system wasn't worth saving. The nights at my kitchen table with coffee gone cold, spreadsheets breeding like mosquitoes, my emergency fund dwindling, my pride refusing to pick up the phone and ask for help I knew would come tangled in strings. You'll see, I say, and my voice sounds like a thing set gently on a shelf where it belongs. Rue, Nora says, using my nickname like a skeleton key, don't be dramatic. The word dramatic tries to find me, to crawl under my skin where it used to live. It doesn't fit as well as it used to. I watch it slide down and fall to the floor like a spent moth. Tell us, baby, Mama urges. She reaches for her flute, remembers herself, and folds both hands in her lap like prayer. I open the envelope. The paper inside is heavier than it looks. There's a small, awful pleasure in the way it sounds when I lay it flat. A clean smack that shuts the room up. The candlesticks throw our shadows into long stripes across the cloth. My hands look like someone else's, steady and sure. Nora's smile is gone now, replaced by a bright curiosity, the way she peels back tissue from a gift so it can be reused. Daddy reads with his lips, a habit he claims he doesn't have, the words forming silently as his eyes move left to right. Is that, he begins. It is, I say. What is it? Nora says, impatient. Alone? If you bought a bigger place I can totally still. It's a sales agreement, Mama says, and her voice clicks on a register I only hear when she's truly surprised. Ruth, this is a sales agreement. For your house. Daddy asks, like maybe there's a version where it's a different house, someone else's house, a hypothetical house we're all going to pretend about until it goes away. For my house, I say. I signed last week. The silence is not empty. It has weight and weather. In it, Nora's flute skids, catches the edge of her plate and tips. Champagne freckles the linen and the runner and the shine on Mama's favorite fork. You sold it. Nora's voice is small and high, brittle as spun sugar. You sold it. Closing is in 3 weeks, I say. There's a 30-day rent back. I'll be out by the end of August. Mama's chair scrapes. No. You can cancel. There's always a cooling. There isn't, I say gently. And I wouldn't even if there were. Daddy's mouth opens then closes. His hands settle on either side of his plate like he needs the table to anchor him to something solid. Nora looks at me as though I've set fire to a map we were all supposed to follow. You did this, she swallows, colors. You did this because of me. I did this because my roof failed, my pipe broke and my furnace died, I say. Because my sleep is a rumor and my savings are tired. Because I don't want to owe anyone anything that comes with a receipt I can't read. You could have asked for help, Mama says, and it sounds almost like a cry. We would have helped. You helped Nora, I say, not unkindly. It is a statement, not a knife. You have helped her over and over. That's who we are here. We are a family, Daddy says. We are, I say. And I'm a person in that family who gets to decide who lives in my house. A wind rises, the curtains lift. The storm is coming on. Nora's eyes shine. She looks at me like I am the one leaving her on a doorstep in the rain. What am I supposed to do? You have an apartment, I say. And 2 parents with a guest room they just redecorated. Mama flinches. Daddy looks away. Nora laughs once, a sound with no joy in it. So that's it? You're okay with me being homeless? You are not homeless, I say. You are inconvenienced. Ruth, Daddy warns. I pick up my spoon and taste the gumbo. It is finally as good as it smells. My body registers hunger. My hands register their steadiness. I don't know if this is what power feels like, but it's what mine feels like. Quiet and precise and immune to certain kinds of noise. From the front room, thunder rolls. The first drops hit the sagging porch roof and tap a rhythm I've known since childhood. Eat, Mama says automatically, the old script trying to find its footing. Before it gets cold. We eat. Or they move food around on their plates and I eat because I am starving. The storm deepens, the world outside blurs. When the lightning cracks, it's close enough to flash the room white for a heartbeat. In that heartbeat I see us as we are, Nora forever mid-leap onto the softest landing. Mama clutching traditions like talismans. Daddy stretched between pride and habit. And me, a woman who keeps other people's hearts beating for a living, finally protecting her own. I mop the last of the roux with cornbread and set my napkin on my plate. The envelope sits between the crystal and the brass like a truth we're all going to have to learn to live with. Next Tuesday won't work, I say, and the quiet in my voice is the truest thing I own. There won't be anything to move into. Outside the rain comes harder. Inside we begin, finally, to stop pretending this is a surprise. The rain never really stopped that night. By morning, the streets in Bywater shone like slick mirrors, and the gutters swallowed fallen magnolia petals whole. I stood at my kitchen sink, scrubbing gumbo bowls with hands that still remembered the weight of the envelope on Mama's table. Every scrape of the sponge felt like sanding down old habits. Obedience, silence, surrender. I kept replaying their faces. Mama's pearl smile cracking, Daddy's jaw tightening like a clamp, Nora's flute slipping from her hand and shattering against hardwood. It was almost comical if it didn't slice so close to the bone. For once, I wasn't the quiet daughter filling the gaps. I had rewritten the script mid-scene and no one knew what to do with me. By Thursday the fallout arrived. My phone lit up at 7:04 a.m., just as I poured burnt coffee into a travel mug. Aunt Linda. She never calls before noon. Ruth, honey, her voice was soaked in sympathy that didn't belong to me. I just talked to your mama. Is it true? Did you sell your beautiful home to keep poor Nora from moving in? The question hit like hot water spilled down my arm. What? She says you were angry, spiteful. That you didn't want the responsibility of family under your roof. I gripped the edge of the counter. That's not what happened. Linda sighed as though she pitied me for lying. Your sister will be homeless. I never thought you could be so cruel. She wasn't the last. That day alone, for calls, 2 voicemails, a text from cousin Jeremy I hadn't spoken to since Katrina. Each message carried the same script. Nora's desperation, my apparent coldness, their profound disappointment. By the time my shift ended, my phone was a pocket full of accusations. When I made the mistake of opening Facebook, it was worse. The hardest lesson in life is learning who has your back when times get tough. Family should be forever, not just when it's convenient. Nora's post had already collected 47 likes, 12 hearts and comments lined up like soldiers. We're here for you, sweetheart. Stay strong. Praying for housing angels. And right there in blue cursive under the post, Mama. We're here for you always, darling. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I'd be sick. On Friday morning, the whispers reached the break room. Lisa, one of the night techs, dropped into the chair across from me, stirring powdered creamer into her cup. Ruth. I ran into your sister at PJ's Coffee yesterday. She told me about the house. My heart froze. What about the house? Lisa's eyes filled with practiced concern. She said you sold it suddenly and now she's facing homelessness. She seemed devastated. If you need help finding her a temporary place, my church has programs. The carrot stick I'd been chewing cracked between my teeth. Lisa, she has an apartment. She has parents with a 4-bedroom house. She's not homeless. Lisa blinked. Oh. She tried to smile but the edges drooped. Oh. I just wanted to help. Her footsteps echoed as she left, but what stayed with me was the realization. Nora hadn't just kept it in the family. She'd carried her story into the city, letting strangers taste my supposed cruelty. That night, I pulled the cardboard boxes closer and began filling them one by one. My house had become a battlefield and packing was both retreat and strategy. Between books and dishes, I stacked invoices in chronological order. Roof replacement, $11,200. Water line repair, $8,200. Heating system failure, $5,000. Each paper was a scar. Each paper was proof. I found the framed photo the realtor snapped the day I closed on this place. Me on the porch, keys in hand, my grin too wide for my face. That woman had believed no one could take this away from her. I placed the photo on top of the keep box, a reminder that I had built something even if my family refused to see it. Saturday afternoon, the Buick rolled up my drive, Nora's red compact close behind. No text, no courtesy knock. The front door rattled under Daddy's fist until I opened it. Mama stepped in first, lips pressed into a line so thin it could slice. You're really doing this madness? I'm closing in 3 weeks, I said, wrapping newspaper around a plate without pausing. Your sister needs you. Mama's voice climbed. You've always been selfish, but this is beyond understanding. I didn't stop taping the package. Did anyone ever ask what I need? Daddy's throat cleared, an old habit before a lecture. Be reasonable, Ruth Ann. I need stability. I need sleep without panic attacks over bills. I need to stop patching holes I can't afford. The room pulsed with silence. For the first time in years they had no ready retort. Mama's eyes darted toward Nora, who stared at the floor, her lip trembling but not speaking. And I realized something startling. I no longer needed their understanding. The ache for validation I'd carried since childhood had thinned, replaced by something sturdier. That evening Maya, my neighbor and friend, showed up with Thai takeout. She filled wine glasses while we wrapped photo albums. "Family patterns are the hardest to break," she said, hands steady over my grandmother's vase. "But sometimes breaking them is survival." I looked around the half-packed kitchen. For the first time in a long time I believed her. By Monday morning the storm had spilled from my family into the whole city. It was no longer whispers in my mother's kitchen or pitiful sighs over gumbo. It was everywhere, threaded through my phone calls, tangled into my workdays and seeping into spaces I thought were mine alone. The first call hit before sunrise. "Uncle James." His voice crackled down the line like a fire someone had already fanned too big. "Ruth, and what the hell are you doing? Your sister says you sold your home just to spite her." "Who does that?" "I didn't." "You've always had a stubborn streak, but this? You're punishing her because she's struggling. Families don't do that." I hung up before my voice could break. But the phone kept buzzing. Cousin Lydia from Baton Rouge, Aunt Carla from Texas, even Daddy's golfing buddy Walter, who I couldn't remember meeting. Each one delivered the same sermon in different voices. "Nora's desperate. Ruth's cruel. What's wrong with her?" By noon I stopped answering. At lunch break I opened Instagram against my better judgment. There it was, Nora's newest post. A photo of her sitting on the curb outside her apartment building, chin on her knees, eyes tilted to the heavens. Caption: "When your own blood decides your roof isn't theirs to share. Learning the hard way that sometimes family is just a word." Broken heart, #homeless, #betrayal, #sisters. Over 200 hearts. A flood of sympathy comments. "You deserve better, girl. Stay strong." And again mama posting little red hearts like confetti. The knife slid deeper when I saw coworkers in the likes list. People I worked 12-hour shifts beside, people who had scrubbed in next to me when patients bled out, people who should have known better than to mistake staged misery for truth. That evening I stood in my half-empty living room surrounded by towers of boxes. The walls, bare of photographs, echoed my breath back at me. I picked up the manila folder I'd been building piece by piece. Invoices, statements, loan documents, repair receipts. Cold paper that told the story no one wanted to hear. For years I had let them define me, difficult, selfish, ungrateful. But these papers had weight. They were more than defenses, they were evidence. And I decided, the next time they ambushed me I would not go in unarmed. The ambush came sooner than expected. Tuesday night the doorbell rang at exactly 7. I knew before I opened it. They arrived like a procession. Mama in her stiff cardigan, Daddy with shoulders squared, Nora trailing close behind. And behind them, Aunt Linda, Uncle James, Cousin Lydia, even Aunt Carla who had driven in from Houston. A firing squad disguised as family. They filed into my dining room as though the house already belonged to them, arranging themselves in a semicircle around the table. Nora took the seat I had left at the head. Of course she did, her face still damp from rehearsed tears. "Ruth," Mama began, voice trembling with practiced grief, "we're here because we love you, but we're worried. Selling your home out of spite isn't healthy. You're not yourself." The others murmured agreement. The trap was set. I stood at the opposite end of the table, folder in hand. My knees should have been shaking, but they weren't. "You want the truth?" I asked. My voice didn't waver. "Then here it is." One by one I laid out the documents. The $11,200 roofing bill, shingles curling like old paper. The $8,200 water line replacement, the plumber's handwriting scrawled in grease pencil. The $5,000 heating system collapse, invoice stamped paid in full in ink that had bled from tears. Each sheet hit the wood with a flat slap. "This," I said, sliding the papers to the center, "is why I sold my house. Not because of Nora. Because my savings were gone. Because every emergency fund I ever scraped together had been gutted by disasters no insurance would cover." Uncle James leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. His frown deepened as he read. "And this," I continued, pulling the last sheet free, "a bank statement with a dwindled balance, is what I had left. Enough to last maybe 2 more months before drowning." Silence pressed heavy on the room. Nora scoffed. "This is creative accounting. You've always been good at twisting numbers to suit yourself." But Uncle James didn't look up. Nora, he said sharply, what's your employment situation these days? He blinked, caught. I'm between projects. Projects? The gallery closed. The donors dried up. The market is brutal right now. Projects, Uncle James repeated, voice flat. He turned back to the bills spread before him. For once, the weight of proof leaned on my side. Dorothy, Mama's oldest friend who had slipped in quietly and sat near the wall, finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried. I've known this family 20 years. I've watched Ruth carry her load without asking anyone for a dime. And I've watched Nora get rent checks, car repairs, bailouts. Everyone's seen it. We just stopped saying it out loud. The words landed like stones breaking glass. Next came Barbara, my financial advisor, who had insisted on being present. She straightened her blazer, eyes sharp. Dependency isn't love. It's a slow suffocation. If this family keeps bailing Nora out, you're not saving her, you're crippling her. Even Thomas, my colleague who had quietly sat in the corner, leaned forward. My brother lived off my parents until he was 42. They thought they were helping. When they died, he couldn't manage a bill. He lost everything within a year. Sometimes love means saying no. For the first time, the myth cracked. The murmurs stopped. Mama stared at the invoices, tears welling in her eyes. Not weaponized this time, but real. Daddy rubbed the bridge of his nose, shoulders sagging. Nora stood abruptly, purse in hand. You're all against me. You've always been against me. Ruth was always the golden child, and now you're worshipping her little spreadsheets. I won't sit here and be treated like a parasite. Her chair screeched back. The door slammed so hard the windows rattled. The silence she left behind was heavier than any storm. For once, I wasn't the villain in the family play. I wasn't the selfish one, the difficult one. I was simply Ruth, a woman who had carried more than her share, finally daring to set it down. The ledger of sacrifice was on the table for all to see. And none of them could look away. The night Nora stormed out, the silence left behind felt different than the silences I'd grown up with. It wasn't loaded with accusation or expectation. It was simply empty. Pause. And in that pause, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one who had to rush in and fill it. I stacked the invoices neatly back into my folder and told everyone, "Thank you for coming." It wasn't dismissal, but it wasn't invitation either. They left quietly, some with their eyes on the floor, some stealing glances at me like I had grown taller during the conversation. Maybe I had. But families like mine don't surrender overnight. By the weekend, Mama and Daddy were back, this time without the extended family, but with Nora trailing behind them like a shadow. Their knock was softer, almost polite, but when I opened the door they swept in as if the house still belonged to them. Mama clutched her purse with white-knuckled resolve. Daddy wore that practiced smile he saved for barbecues where neighbors had to believe everything was fine. Nora's eyes darted around my half-packed living room, searching for an opening. "We've been talking," Mama began, "and we think we've found the perfect solution. A compromise." Daddy nodded eagerly. "Instead of moving in with you, Ruth, and maybe you could help your sister get her own place. Just a loan. Just to get her started. With your success, it would hardly affect you." Nora leaned forward, her voice soft and measured. "Some people just have bad luck, you know? Not everyone lands steady work. You're lucky, Ruth. You owe it to family to share." The old script again played with new lines. "Ruth," Mama whispered, lowering her voice as if we were co-conspirators, "family has always stuck together. If you can't help your sister just this once." She let the words trail off, but the threat was clear. "Refuse and you cut yourself off from us." I didn't answer. Instead, I walked to the dining room table where I had laid out more papers the night before. Pre-approval letters from the bank, financial plans from Barbara, a spreadsheet of every expense I'd documented over the last 2 years. "I'm meeting with my lender tomorrow," I said, sliding the letter across the table. "I've been approved for a townhouse downtown. The mortgage will be 40% less than I pay now. Selling this house isn't about spite. It's about survival." Daddy's eyes flicked over the numbers, his practiced smile cracking at the edges. "This is about finally building back my emergency fund. About lowering my stress so I can do my job without collapsing from exhaustion. About choosing stability." I took a breath, feeling how steady it was. About prioritizing my health. Before any of them could object, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card. I held it toward Nora. Our hospital's marketing department has an entry-level opening. Full-time benefits, enough pay to cover rent on a one-bedroom apartment. HR agreed to interview you if you're interested. Nora's mouth opened then shut. Her eyes searched mine for a trap. This isn't charity, I said. It's an opportunity. Whether you take it or not is your choice. She didn't reach for the card. Her nails tapped the table instead, staccato and sharp. I set another folder on the table. This one wasn't about my bills, it was about theirs. Inside lay a list I had compiled line by line from overheard conversations and receipts left carelessly on countertops. Rent payments, car repairs, credit card bailouts, even the cash advances Daddy had given her. I had circled the total in red at the bottom. The gasp that escaped Mama's lips was almost theatrical. Daddy picked up the paper, his forehead tightening as he scanned the sum. This isn't love, I said quietly, steady as stone. It's dependence. And it's hurting all of you. Daddy opened his mouth but nothing came out. For once he had no lecture ready. Mama's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the manipulative kind I'd grown used to. They seemed confused, maybe even ashamed. We just wanted to help her, she whispered. Then help her stand, I said. That's the only help that lasts. The memory surfaced. Daddy telling me years ago that quitting college wasn't an option. We're not doing you any favors if we make life too easy, he'd said. Funny how principles change when applied to different daughters. The silence stretched. At last, Daddy draped an arm around Mama's shoulders. We should go, he muttered. They walked to the door together, a little slower than they'd come in. Nora hesitated, her eyes flicking to the business card still resting between us. I don't need your charity job, she said finally, her voice sharp but thinner than before. Then she turned, slamming the door behind her. I stood in the quiet, papers spread like battle plans across the table, and realized I hadn't raised my voice once. I hadn't begged, hadn't justified, hadn't apologized. I had drawn a line. And for once they were the ones forced to decide which side they stood on. The house grew emptier by the day. Cardboard boxes stood like battlements against the walls, labeled in minute block letters. Kitchen, books, linens. Each one closed felt like a victory. Each roll of tape sounded like armor sealing shut. I could almost breathe again. But families like mine don't surrender after the first loss. They regroup. They scheme. And on the last Saturday of July they came back. The doorbell rang at 2 in the afternoon. I already knew. When I opened the door, Mama stood on the porch, flanked by Daddy and Nora. Their united front, perfectly rehearsed. Mama's purse hung heavy from her arm, her lips pressed into the same tight line she'd worn at church funerals. Daddy's smile was stretched too wide, all false cheer and no warmth. Nora lingered half a step behind, her eyes glassy but alert, scanning the living room like a hawk circling a field. Ruth, honey, Mama said, stepping inside without waiting. We've been talking. We think we've found the perfect solution. I stayed by the door. What solution? A compromise, Daddy said, his tone buoyant like a salesman pretending not to smell smoke. Nora clasped her hands in front of her chest, eyes soft. I really appreciate you hearing us out. They arranged themselves on the couch, the only piece of furniture not yet swaddled in moving blankets, while I remained standing. The imbalance was intentional. I was done sitting beneath them. Mama cleared her throat. We know selling the house is your decision. But instead of letting Nora move in, maybe you could help her get her own place. Just a little loan. With your success, it wouldn't affect you. Daddy nodded quickly. Just a bridge until she finds stability. Family helps family. Nora leaned forward, lowering her eyes. Some people just don't get the breaks, Ruth. Not everyone lands steady work. You're lucky. Don't you think you owe a little back? The word "oh" reverberated inside me like a bell struck wrong. Ruth, Mama whispered, voice conspiratorial, the family has always stuck together. If you can't help your sister just this once. She let the rest trail off, but the warning hung heavy. Cut Marissa off, cut yourself off too. I walked to the dining table where I'd left another set of documents. They watched, confusion flickering across their faces. This isn't about spite, I said, sliding a pre-approval letter across the table. It's about survival. This townhouse will reduce my housing costs by almost 40%. It's the smart choice. My financial health comes first. Daddy picked up the letter. His face tightened at the numbers. But before he could speak, I pulled out the card again and set it on the table. Nora, this is an opportunity. A real job. Full-time benefits. It's waiting for you if you want it. Her lips curled. I don't need your charity. Without a word, I set another paper down. My itemized ledger of every bailout she'd been given over the past 5 years. Car payments, rent checks, credit cards wiped clean. The total at the bottom circled in red. Mama gasped. Daddy's smile shattered completely. This isn't love, I said. It's dependence. And it's eating all of you alive. For the first time in years, I saw hesitation in Daddy's eyes. The iron certainty that always backed his lectures faltered. Mama's tears spilled, real this time. We just wanted to help her, she whispered. Then help her stand, I answered. That's the only kind of help that lasts. Nora pushed to her feet, fury painted across her face. You think you're so righteous, Ruth? You think waving bills around makes you better? You've always loved playing the martyr. Fine. Sell your little house, move into your little shoebox and see if anyone cares. Don't come running when you're alone. Her words echoed against the bare walls, but they didn't stick. For the first time I felt nothing but clarity. I'm not running, I said calmly. I'm choosing. Daddy stood, pulling Mama with him. His eyes lingered on me for a long moment. You're making a mistake, Ruth Ann, he muttered. But his voice didn't carry the conviction it once had. They walked to the door together. Nora hesitated, glancing once at the business cards still on the table. Her lips parted as if to say something, but instead she slammed the door behind her. The quiet that followed wasn't oppressive. It was clean. I looked around at the stripped walls, the half-filled boxes, the stacks of proof on the table. For years I had lived in a house that was supposed to be my dream. But tonight, for the first time, I realized the house wasn't freedom. Drawing the line was. The last week in the house passed like the slow exhale of a storm. Each room emptied in stages. Drawers cleared, shelves stripped, walls naked where pictures once clung. By the time the movers arrived, the place echoed. It sounded less like abandonment and more like release. On closing day, I stood in the doorway with the realtor, watching rain streak the glass. The buyers shook my hand, their excitement bright and unburdened. They didn't see ghosts in the corners, didn't hear the echoes of arguments across the dinner table. To them it was a beginning. For me it was closure. I slid the keys into their palms and felt the weight leave mine. But the house wasn't the only thing I was leaving. The Buick showed up just as the papers were signed. Mama, Daddy, and Nora piled out, their faces drawn tight, their umbrellas blooming black against the drizzle. Ruth, Mama called, her voice breaking across the driveway, you don't have to do this. I should have expected the scene. One last attempt to reel me back into the orbit I had finally broken. I already have, I said simply. Daddy's jaw worked. Where will you go? You can't make it alone like this. I smiled, not bitter, not triumphant, just steady. I already have been. You just never noticed. Nora lingered behind them, her eyes darting toward me, then away. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Silence had always been her sharpest weapon. I closed the car door. This time I drove away first. The townhouse wasn't much to look at. Smaller, humbler, tucked between a bakery and a laundromat downtown. But when I opened the door, the air smelled of paint and fresh plaster, not memories. Boxes filled the floor, labeled with the same careful handwriting. Donate. Trash. My life reduced to cardboard and ink, but this time it felt deliberate. That night, I spread my financial documents across the new dining table. For once, they didn't feel like chains. They felt like evidence of a battle survived. My expenses had dropped by 40%. My savings plan was already in motion. Stability wasn't just a dream, it was math. And math doesn't lie. Maya arrived with Thai food again, this time laughing as we used unpacked mugs for wine glasses. To freedom, she toasted. Barbara, my advisor, emailed me late that night. Proud of you for making the hard choice. You've set yourself up for security, not survival. Even Thomas from the hospital texted, got the truck again if you need help with furniture. Just say when. These weren't obligations. They weren't debts hidden in kindness. They were genuine offers. For the first time in years, I felt what support was supposed to be. As I unpacked, I found the framed photo from the day I bought my old house. Me on the porch, grin wide, keys in hand. I set it on a shelf in the townhouse. Not as a reminder of failure, but of proof. I had built something once. I could build again. Except this time I wasn't building for approval or to keep peace, or to prove I wasn't difficult. This time I was building for me. The next morning a text from Nora appeared. You made your point. Don't think this means I forgive you. You abandoned me. I stared at it for a long time. My thumbs hovered, then I set the phone down. Not every message deserves an answer. Instead, I slid the hospital job posting back into my bag. Whether Nora took it or not was her choice. My role in her life was no longer to carry her. Sunday morning I walked to the corner bakery, bought a croissant and sat at a tiny table by the window. The sun slanted across my face and the city outside hummed, streetcars clattering, a trumpet practicing somewhere down the block. For the first time the hum didn't feel heavy. It felt like possibility. I had drawn a line. I had kept it. And when they pushed, when they tried to shame me, when they turned the whole family into a chorus of accusations, I hadn't bent. That strength, quiet but unshakable, was mine to keep. As I sipped my coffee I realized something. I hadn't lost a home. I had gained myself. And that was the beginning I had been waiting for all along.